Okay, good morning, everybody. It's Jeff Goldberg for the Sales Pro Network. Welcome to Friday, June 16th. I'm sorry, July 16th. I hope the weather is pleasant where you are. It's a bit warm here on Long Island. It's Friday. I'm wearing a black t-shirt, so it must be the Sales Pro Network. Anyways, today we don't have a guest. I'm going to do a training on closing the deal and how to ask for money. As some of you know, I founded the Sales Pro Network to elevate the profession of sales. It's a place where salespeople can come ask questions and get coaching, share their successes, their failures, their challenges. And typically on a Friday, I bring in a guest who can add value to the profession of sales. But today the guest is me. So I'm going to, in a moment, share my screen. I won't be able to see your comments or questions while I'm broadcasting because I'm going to share my screen with you, and I can't see the comments if I'm sharing my screen. But please do drop a hello in the chat box. If you are watching live, let me know who you are. If you haven't connected StreamYard to Facebook, because otherwise it just says Facebook user, and I have no idea who that is. And if I can remember, I'm an old guy and I don't always remember everything, but at the end of the broadcast, before I get off, I will stop sharing my screen. I'll check the comments, and if anybody has a question, I will be happy to take them. And before I go to the presentation, good morning, Stephen Feswick from Halifax, Nova Scotia. Good to see you, Stephen. All right, guys, I'm going to dive right into it. Give me a second to share my screen, and we're going to go right into closing the deal and asking for money. And okay, I'm hoping that you guys can see my screen now. All righty. So the question that I get quite often from prospects of mine, I'll get a call like this. Jeff, can you come teach my people how to close? In fact, I still remember a few years back, I got a call from a vice president of sales for a cable TV network whose people sell advertising on cable TV in the Midwest. He covers 5 states. And he said, Jeff, I cover 5 states with 40 salespeople, and I'm getting them together in Indiana for 3 days of motivation and pump up stuff and training and all that kind of stuff. I'm wondering, can you come out on the 3rd day and spend the day with my people teaching them how to close? And my answer was this: I'd be glad to come to Indiana. I'd be glad to spend the day with your people, and I'd be glad to teach them how to close. But that's a 5-minute discussion. What are we going to do with the other 7 hours and 55 minutes of the day? Closing the sale is not really a long discussion if you do it right and if you know how to ask. There are several things that you want to keep in mind. You want to have confidence when you're asking for money and trying to close. You want to come from a place of service. You want to have some kind of a sales process that you're actually using, and you have to have the right verbiage. And today, I'm going to try to do my very best to give you all of that. I just realized I didn't turn off my cell phone. I apologize. Let me do that right now so that my kids aren't texting me silly pictures during this whole thing. So I want to talk first about talking about money. There is a time in every presentation and every sales process where at some point we've got to let our prospect know how much it's going to cost them. What's the actual amount of money it's going to take to get whatever product or service that you're selling. And my experience is that quite often salespeople fall apart right at this point. They could be doing a terrific job the whole time during the sales process, but they get to the money part. And what typically happens is psychologically, we as salespeople start thinking, here's what's going to make or break my sale: the money. If the price isn't right, the prospect's not going to buy. Well, I'd probably say that's true. If the price isn't right, the prospect isn't going to buy. But we've got to show the prospect enough value so that they feel the price is right. You see, sales is about 2 things when you're selling. You're selling both your relationship with the person and the value. Unless you're in a highly transactional sale, then it's about relationship and value. And when it comes to asking for money, if you have not shown enough value, that's when you get objections like the price is too high. When your prospect tells you that the price is too high, it does not mean the price is too high. It means they have not seen the value in paying that amount of money. And guess who that's on? Me and you. If the prospect does not see the value, it's not on them, it's on us. And we've got to make sure that we're doing everything we possibly can to establish rapport and value. Establish rapport and relationship, and to make sure that the prospect clearly understands the value of what we're going to bring to the table. I recently had a discussion with 2 guys from Australia who were trying to sell me a service, and it seemed very, very interesting. Their presentation was beautiful. Now, when I'm listening to a sales presentation, I listen with two ears at the same time. Not two ears because I've got two ears, but on one side of my brain, or maybe it's my brain, I should say, I listen to two sides of my brain. One side is listening to the presentation itself and evaluating, is this something that I want to invest in? Would this be something that would help me and bring me value? But the other side is evaluating their selling skills, because I can't stop doing that as a sales coach and trainer. I'm always listening to everything salespeople say, because that's what I get paid to do. Listen to what they say and help them say it better so that they can close more business. Well, these guys did a terrific job. Their handoff to one another was flawless. They never spoke over each other. They clearly answered all my questions. They showed me a heck of a lot of value. But the guy who was leading the conversation, when it came time to talk about money, he completely fell apart. He started fumfering, clearing his throat. He kind of looked down a little bit instead of looking into the camera. We were via Zoom, of course, because they were talking to me from Australia. I could see that he was nervous. And when he gave me the number, he kind of lowered his voice a little. I could tell that he was absolutely positively not confident in his service or that it was worth what he was asking me. And he completely fell apart, and I didn't buy from him. He emailed me later on, and I responded, I have some advice for you. And I said, you did a great job until you asked me for the money, and that's where you fell apart. And he responded saying, yes, I know that happens. It's been pointed out to me before. I don't know what to do about it. So when you get to the point where you are about to ask somebody for money, you're about to tell them what the cost or the price is, you want to make sure that you do a mental check on yourself and say, okay, have I done everything I possibly can to create a relationship in whatever amount of time I've been speaking to this person or these people? And have I shown them enough value? Do they clearly see that what I have to offer them is worthwhile? Forget about the price, because we haven't talked about the price yet, but do they have a strong interest because they've seen the value? And at that point, you've got to stand up straight. And if you're sitting, don't worry about it. But I'm giving you kind of a metaphor, not a metaphor, but stand up straight, throw your chest out, have that confident look on your face, and act as if when you give them the number, they are absolutely positively going to go like this. Okay, sounds good. You've got to have in your mind, not that the prospect is going to think it's too expensive, but that the prospect is going to think, yeah, that sounds about right. Even if it's a large number, you've got to have that confidence, because if you do not have complete confidence in your number, I don't care what words you say, your prospect is going to feel something is off. They're going to feel, they don't have to be a trained sales coach or a trained sales trainer to know when somebody's not confident about their price. And I think if you each look in your life, in your experience, in your world, you'll probably come up with a bunch of situations where salespeople have done that to you, done a great job, and then blown at the end with the price. Hopefully, you're not looking in the mirror and seeing that you do that. So make sure that when it comes to talking about the price, you, first of all, don't talk about price until you've shown enough value, and then do it with complete confidence in every word you're saying. And then once you do tell them about the money and ask for the order, shut up. Most of us aren't very good at doing that. Now, the second thing is your come from. And by come from, I mean who you are in the matter. I'm pointing to my belly right now. You can't see it because that's off camera, thank goodness. But your come from in selling should always be, I'm here to help you. I'm here to serve you. Zig Ziglar, a famous motivational speaker and sales trainer, his sales training actually was horrible, but his motivational stuff was great. He said that sell comes from the Swedish word selja, S-E-L-J-E, which he said means to serve. It actually doesn't, but I really like that thought, that our job as a salesperson is to serve our prospect. And that's truly what I believe. It's not just something I think, I truly do believe it. My job is to serve my prospects and my clients and help them sell more, help them get more appointments with decision makers, help them have a shorter sales cycle, help them close more business more profitably. Those are the things that I bring to the table with my clients. Shorter sales cycle, more appointments, close more business more profitably. I truly believe that I can do that. I know because I've done it a bunch of times. I've been doing it for almost 50 years. I've seen success story after success story after success story, which makes me incredibly confident when it comes time to talk about price or to ask for money. However, some of you may not have the long experience that I do at this point, and it's still human nature to get a little bit nervous when it comes to talking about the price, because sometimes people are not coming from a place of service. Where they're coming from is, I need to close a deal. One of the things I want you to remember is, it's not about you or me. It's not about either of us. It's about the prospect. It can't be. It simply cannot be, if I don't close this deal, I'm getting kicked out of my apartment, or they're going to come repo my car, or any of the other million and one things that happen when you don't have enough money. And my friends, I've been there. You can bet over 48 years of selling, I've been there more than once, in a very tough position financially, where if I didn't do something quickly, I was going to be screwed. That's when the time is you really need to strap on your big cojones and your acting skills and act as if you don't need it, because prospects can smell need or greed like dogs can smell fear. And the last thing you want is for your prospect to smell commission breath on you. You don't want them to think that you need the deal. It's kind of, for me, like dating. I want to meet a woman who wants me but doesn't need me. I don't need to be needed. Same thing with a prospect. You want to show them you want to do business with them, but you can't have the attitude that you need them, because desperation comes across as commission breath, as greed. And the other thing that happens is, if you are coming across that way, they're going to negotiate the crap out of you. That's the last thing you want. So your come from should always be service. How can I best help you? How can I best serve this prospect? I can tell you that one of my best friends in the world is a divorce attorney, and we speak a lot about all kinds of things, including business. And he actually prays. He's more religious than I am, but he prays to God before every meeting with a divorced, two people who are trying to get divorced, or going to get divorced. He prays for the ability to serve them. He's actually told me the prayer. It's dear God, please give me the ability to listen to these people, help them through this, and serve them in the best way possible, so that they both come out of it really winning in a situation where nobody's really winning. So it's that come from of truly wanting to serve others that takes away the smell of commission breath on your breath and makes the prospect feel more comfortable in doing business with you. Nobody wants to deal with a desperate salesperson. Nobody wants to deal with an unsuccessful salesperson. That's why, to a certain extent, it's important that you act and look as if you are a professional, even if you aren't. Act and look as if you don't need the business, but you want it. And that includes things like dressing professionally, being well-groomed. People look at everything and are evaluating and judging every little thing when you're selling to them. So you want to make sure that you're in the right frame of mind mentally, and that right frame of mind is come from service. I'm here to help you. Now, before we get to how to close, you've got to understand that if you're going to close, what you really need to do is have a sales process that works, because closing a deal is the natural outcome of the sales process done right. I'm going to say that again because it's so important. Closing is the natural outcome of the sales process done right. This does not mean that everything closes just because you did the sales process right, but you will close way more business if you focus a little bit less on the exact words that you use when you're asking for business, and more on the entire process from start to finish. And if you look at the bottom of your screen, I've laid out the process that I teach to salespeople. Now, sometimes it has to be moved around a little bit depending on the situation, but I've trained people in a huge array of industries all over the world, companies of all sizes, including major corporations that each of you know, as well as tiny companies you never heard of and I never heard of until they contacted me. This is a proven, repeatable process that works over and over and over throughout industries. I promise you, it would be rather challenging for you to come up with an industry that I have not done work for. So in almost every sale, you've got to open the conversation and establish rapport with people. You've got to get to know them and let them get to know you. Because while a lot of things have changed over the last 5 decades, there's one thing that has not, and that is the fact that people do business with people that they both like and trust. People do business with people that they both like and trust, and they will go out of their way to not do business with people if they don't like you or trust you. Now, of the two, trust is the most important. You might find that you trust somebody who's not that likable, and you'll do business with them anyways. But given a choice between two salespeople offering similar products at similar prices, people are always going to go with the person that they like more as long as they trust both. So we've got to be likable and trustworthy. And the way we do that is by opening the sale first and not getting right down to business, even though that's what people think they want. You've got to have a little bit of conversation first. And I don't care what you say. I teach a certain way to establish rapport with people, but you've got to do something besides walking in, thanking people for their time and saying, I know you must be busy. I really appreciate your time. Let me get right down to business for you. Now, again, this may vary depending on the size of the sale, the length of your sales cycle, how many people you're meeting with in a particular sale. But for the most part, this works almost every single time. First step is always open the conversation and begin to establish rapport. Once you've gotten past that, the most important part of any sales process is, in my case, step number 2, which is gather information. Sales is a conversation or a series of conversations leading to help someone choose to do business with you. And the key to selling, as opposed to what most people think, is asking questions. All great salespeople are great question askers. They ask lots of questions and they ask great questions. And the questions uncover for them, the questions that a salesperson asks, if they're doing it right, uncover for them what makes sense to their prospect regarding what they have to sell them. I'm going to say that again also. The questions that you need to ask, the questions that a good salesperson asks, are the questions that uncover for them what makes sense to their prospect regarding what they have to sell them. So when I'm selling my sales training services, forget about coaching or any of the other things I do, when I'm talking to a vice president of sales at Cisco Systems about me training some of their people or all of their people, I need to find out what makes sense to that vice president of sales about training his or her salespeople now. So I'm going to ask a bunch of questions designed to tell me what makes sense to them. Like, how do you train your salespeople now? When a new person comes on board, how do you get them up to speed? How do you get your experienced people to be even better than they already are? I ask lots and lots of questions so that I can uncover what makes sense to them. And here's the thing. What makes sense to your prospect is the same thing that makes sense to my prospect, which is whatever they're doing now. Whatever they're doing now in my world, whatever they're doing now regarding sales training is what makes sense to them. So it could be that they don't do anything. Well, up until now, that's what's made sense to them. It could be they use a different trainer. Maybe that's what makes sense to them. They have their people read books or watch videos or whatever they tell me. That's what makes sense to them. And that's what I need to know, because during my presentation, when it comes time to tell them about what I'm going to do for them, I'm going to include, here's what you're doing now, and here's how we can help you do it better. And here's why we do that. People buy things because it makes sense to buy those things. People invest with you or invest with me because it makes sense to do that. We do everything we do because it makes sense. I've got air conditioning on in my house today. It's almost 90 degrees already, at least it seems to be outside. I walked my dog before and I nearly melted. It's pretty hot here. It makes sense to have air conditioning on. I turned off my landline phone before we got on this because I didn't want it ringing during it. It made sense, this presentation. It made sense to do that. And I realized that I hadn't turned off my cell phone. So I turned that off just now because that made sense too. We do everything we do because it makes sense to do those things, including buy stuff. And so do our prospects. So we need to ask a bunch of questions designed to help us understand what makes sense to our prospect regarding what we have to sell them. So we're going to ask lots and lots and lots of questions, and you want to be really good at asking questions. And I urge people, brainstorm on all the questions you could possibly ask if your prospect would give you unlimited time and answer every question with complete honesty. Come up with a list of questions that you could ask in any given situation, because amateurs wing it and professionals plan. Before I go into any sales call, I think about this. What information do I need to get today in order to consider this sales call successful? What information do I need to get today in order to consider this sales call successful? Well, if I know what information I need to get, I now know what questions I need to ask, especially if I've thought in advance about what questions could I possibly ask in any situation. Questions are the key to selling. It's actually questions, listening skills, and great storytelling. 3 keys to great salespeople. Once you've gathered all this information, because you've asked a lot of questions and you've done it in a conversational way, not grilling people or interrogating people, but having a real conversation with them, you then need to confirm the information that they've given you. They've told you what makes sense to you, and you now need to feed it back to them, paraphrase it back to them with something like, well, if I heard you correctly, what you told me was blah, 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 blah. You want to make sure you do this. And by the way, most salespeople that I've observed do not do this. They just figure they must have heard it right, or they don't even realize that they should be doing this. But you want to do this because sometimes when your prospect is answering your questions, they don't give you the right answer because they've never heard the question before. Or sometimes we're not listening properly and we hear something by mistake. So we want to make sure that we're on the same page with what the customer is telling us, the prospect is telling us, because if you make a presentation without doing that, you may be basing your presentation, your proposal on bad information, and that's not going to help you. You need to clearly understand your prospect situation, what they do now, what they've done in the past, and what they want to accomplish in the future in order to give them a presentation that's going to make sense to them. If you don't make a presentation that makes sense to them, you're going to walk away scratching your head and wondering, why didn't I close the deal? I'm so good at sales. Why didn't they buy from me? Because you didn't make sense to them. You didn't give them a compelling enough reason to stop doing what they're doing and switch to what you are recommending. Now, when it comes time to present, there are 4 elements to any good sales presentation. And they are, number 1, enthusiasm. If you cannot enthusiastically talk about what you've come up with for your prospect, your product, your service, whatever is in your proposal, if you're not excited about it, then why would they get excited about it? And people part with their money much more readily when they're excited. Imagine when you go to buy a new car, you're typically excited about it. It's a lot of money. How about buying a house? Buying a house is exciting. It's typically the largest expenditure that any human makes in their lifetime. Buying a home, $500,000, $700,000, $1 million more, huge amounts of money. We get excited about it. If we can't get our prospect excited, and we do that by communicating our enthusiasm, our excitement, then we're going to have a much tougher time closing business. You want to be better at closing? Make sure you're using enthusiasm when you actually are talking about what you're going to do for them. If you are not a naturally enthusiastic person, and I know not everybody is, I'm pretty enthusiastic naturally, but if you're not, you can always make statements that share your enthusiasm. Like, I'm really excited about what I've come up with for you. I hope you're going to be excited too. Now, that's not the same as speaking enthusiastically, but it still gives them an impression of enthusiasm and excitement. You've got to do something to let them know that you believe in what you're about to tell them. So the first step is using enthusiasm or excitement. The second and third steps are discussing the features and the benefits of what you have to offer them. Features are what something is or has, and benefits are what something does. The example I use all the time is my car. I just got a new car. It's actually the same as my last car, just with a better stereo and a bigger sunroof. But when I got my last car, I didn't know it when I ordered it, but it came with heated seats and a heated steering wheel. I had never had those in my car before. Didn't matter to me. I'll never order a car again that doesn't have them, because I found that having heated seats and a heated steering wheel in the winter here in the Northeast is a pretty darn good thing. I'm able to do a remote start on my car from my house, get into my car 10 minutes later, and my seat is toasty, and so is my steering wheel. But the thing is that the heated steering wheel or the heated seats are features of the car. That's not why I made sure that this time my car came with those things. I made sure that I got heated seats and a heated steering wheel in my car this time because I wanted the benefit of a heated steering wheel and a heated seats. And the benefit is I get to have a warm butt. Now, I know that sounds funny, but it's not. I don't care if the seats are heated as long as my butt's warm when I get in the car and my hands are warm when I put it on the steering wheel. I don't care how Jeep does it. I just want to make sure it gets done. So we always want to make sure we're pointing out both the features of what we have to offer, the is or has, and the benefits, what things do, because people buy what things do. And if they don't clearly see the value, the benefit to them, they are not going to do business with you. Enthusiasm, features, benefits, and the fourth part of any good presentation is what's called a verbal proof story. Verbal proof story. And a verbal proof story is a story about somebody else, like your prospect, who by doing business with you, lived happily ever after. Kind of like a fairy tale, except hopefully it's not a fairy tale. You want to be able to tell a story or several stories about other prospects who are in a similar situation, other companies like theirs, other people like them who were in a fairly similar situation, decided to do business with you, and it worked out well for them. So in my world, it might be, wow, your situation reminds me of when I worked with Aramark. They also had 400 salespeople across the country who were pretty decent at getting appointments. They felt that they didn't need that, but they were having trouble closing business. So what we did was we did training all across the country in various areas for the various sales teams. And then we followed up with ongoing coaching once every 2 weeks for each salesperson. And over the course of 3 months, we improved sales 17%. And over 6 months, we had increased sales 22% just by doing some training and coaching. Now, the reason we want to tell a story like this is because most people, even professionals, have a difficult time making a yes decision because our brain is wired up to think negatively in almost any given buying situation. We start thinking about what could go wrong if we make a bad decision. What if it doesn't work? What if the product or service doesn't work? What if I invest in something for my company and it doesn't work out and my boss gets pissed off? What if I lose my job? The what if? We're wired up to think that way. And when we tell a verbal proof story to our prospect, it helps their brain quiet down a little bit. And instead of going, what if it doesn't work out? We want their inner talk to go to, oh, it worked out well for somebody similar to me, so maybe it'll work out well for me too. Enthusiasm, features, benefits, verbal proof story, each and every time. The next step would be negotiating if needed. I urge you to not negotiate. I know that sounds weird. I don't negotiate at all. I teach people how to negotiate, but I don't negotiate. Now, when I say I don't negotiate, what I mean is I don't discount. Because most salespeople, negotiating really is discounting. Because it sounds like this. The prospect says, hey, Jeff, can you do a little bit better on the price? And I go, sure, no problem. That's not negotiating. That's discounting. Why? Because the prospect got something, but I didn't get anything back. In a negotiation, when you give something up, you get something back. If you don't get something back, you're discounting. Discounting, for lack of a better term, sucks. When you discount, you do two things. One is you hurt yourself and your company. Your company's going to make less money, and if you're on commission at all, so are you. So why would you want to do that? The other thing is you're training your new client. You're training this new client of yours that you're going to discount every single time for them, which means the only way you can negotiate in the future with them is you've got to go in with a higher price than you actually want and let them talk you down to the price that you do want. I don't like to play games like that. Is that a valid technique? It is. I choose personally not to do that. When I give my price, that's the price, period. There's no negotiating. Now, if indeed somebody needs a better price out of me, I might trade them something like I could bring the price down a little if you take a longer engagement. That's negotiating. So I'm not going to spend much more time on this because this is typically a 2-hour discussion in a training program, but that's the essence of negotiating. Don't give something up without getting something back, and do as much as you possibly can to build as much value as you possibly can in your product or service so that you don't have to negotiate. So that when you give your prospect the price, they go like this. Okay, sounds good. And believe me, it does happen. It also is a part of that confidence I was talking about before. If you seem to have a lack of confidence when you're discussing the price, your prospect's going to smell it, especially if you deal with procurement people. They are trained to look for that kind of weakness, and they will beat the crap out of you financially if you don't come across with confidence in what you have, in coming from a place of service and negotiating effectively. Finally, it's closing time. Now, that's the question that comes up all the time. How do I actually close, Jeff? All this stuff sounds great, but what words am I supposed to say? So here's the thing. There's a million ways to ask people for their business. There are books written on the subject with all kinds of closes that you could possibly imagine. Some of that, if you read them, you're going to laugh at and go, did anybody really ever do that? And yes, in the olden days of sales, people used all kinds of closing tricks. The 3 devil close, the assume close, the puppy dog close, the Ben Franklin. I mean, I can name a ton of them. I teach and use one close and one close only, and I would urge you to do the same. You don't need closing tricks. Tricks imply that you're trying to trick somebody. Now, I kind of like the word tricks because I like magicians, but you don't need closing tricks. Just be straightforward with people. Go through the steps that I just shared with you. Do it with confidence. And when it's time to close, which means you've already talked about the money and done any negotiating if you have to, These at the bottom of the screen, hopefully, if my slides have been advancing for you guys, I know they didn't last time. If my slides have been advancing, you should see what I call the "in my professional opinion" close. And these are the exact words that I teach and the exact words that I use when I'm closing business. So if I'm selling to somebody named Denise, at this point, I'm going to say this. I'm going to be very confident. I'm going to look Denise in the eye and I'm going to say, Denise, of course, I've already gone over my presentation. I've told Denise what I'm going to do for her. Denise, in my professional opinion, that's the plan that makes sense to me and what I believe we should do to move forward. What do you think? Denise, in my professional opinion, that's the plan that makes sense to me and what I believe we should do to move forward. What do you think? Now, there's psychology in these words. Sales is mostly psychology. And if the more you understand how the human brain works, how their psychology works, the better off you are. There should be psychology in your words that help people feel comfortable to come to the right decision, which is to choose to do business with you. So when you say to somebody, in my professional opinion, excuse me, what you're doing is you're telling them, I am a professional, kind of like this doctor whose picture you see at the bottom right of the screen. That's actually my doctor. That's my internist who I love, Rob Perlmutter. Great doctor. Been using him for a long, long time. Wouldn't want to go to anybody else. Great guy. I trust him. He's a professional. He does this for a living. He went to school for a lot of years. He's worked with he's my age, so I know he's got a lot of experience. He is a true professional. And when when Dr. Perlmutter tells me to do something, I do it other than lose weight. Anything else, Jeff, you need an injection. Okay, shoot me up, doc. Go get, here's one I love. Jeff, it's time for a colonoscopy. I don't want to get a colonoscopy, but Rob's a professional. And when he thinks I need a colonoscopy, I get one. I know that might be an ugly picture for all of you at 10:31 in the morning, at least here on the East Coast. But my point is, Rob is a professional. I trust him implicitly. And when you say to somebody, in my professional opinion, you're implying that you are a professional, just like Dr. Perlmutter. Then that's the plan that makes sense to me. I've already just shared with you, people buy because it makes sense to do so. Let's come right out and tell them this makes sense. It's going to sink into their subconscious. Oh yeah, this makes sense. And what I believe, people need belief, that we should do, not what you should do. Notice I didn't say what I believe you should do, what I believe we should do. We're partners in this to move forward. Forward motion. Everybody likes forward motion. And then you do the most difficult thing for people to do. Shut up. Just stop talking. This is where I see a lot of salespeople blow their deal. They'll ask a closing question, and there will be 2 seconds of silence on the prospect's part, and they jump in with something else. Another feature, another benefit. Even worse, lowering the price. Would it help if I drop the price a little bit? Don't do that. Understand the psychology on the other person's side. You've just told them how much it's going to cost to do business with you. You've given them what could be a very large number. It's unreasonable to think that somebody's going to make an immediate decision as soon as you say, here's the price, will you do business with me? It's unreasonable to expect them to do that every time. Now, will some people do that? Sure. I have that happen on a regular basis. People just nod and go, okay, sounds good, let's move forward. And sometimes they don't. Sometimes they need time to think it over. Sometimes it's only a few moments. But give people the time to process by shutting up and not giving any more input. Do not jump in with another feature. Do not jump in with another benefit. And do not jump in with a lower price. Hold your horses. Shut up. Wait. There's an old saying in sales that when you ask a closing question, he or she who speaks first loses. Now, I kind of rebel against the thought of that because I think sales is kind of like war in that there are no winners or losers. Everybody loses or everybody wins. And in sales, that's truly my belief. Either we both win or we both lose. I'm going to get your money and your business, and you're going to get my product or service. Or you're not going to get my product or service, and I'm not going to get your money. And it's on to the next one. And you should absolutely have that attitude, on to the next one. Doesn't mean you give up immediately if somebody says no, but I find quite often salespeople are chasing deals that are dead and they just don't know it yet. The body is dead, laying on a slab, cold in the morgue, but the salesperson doesn't realize it. Shut up, let people think, and listen to what they say, and then, of course, respond appropriately. If they say, yeah, sounds good, pull out your pen and say sign here, or whatever else you do that really closes up the deal. In my world, for selling sales training, it's I pull out my calendar and go, great, let's pick training dates. You pick training dates, I'm showing up on those dates, you're closed. So either ask a question, shut up, wait till they say yes or no, and then deal with it from there. Either write up the order or whatever it is in your world, or deal with whatever objections that come. Closing should not be a difficult thing. Not that you'll close everybody, but if the prospect is going to close, this should not be a big deal. This is not a 3-hour conversation. Closing is the natural outcome of the sales process done right. So understand this. You need to practice this stuff. If you are not used to asking for money with confidence, practice it. If you're not used to giving your presentation, or you think it might need some work, practice. My stepfather, who was a career salesperson, taught me this when I was very young. Do your presentation in the mirror. Looking yourself in the mirror can be unbelievably illuminating. You would not believe what you and I look like sometimes when we're talking to people. It's why recording yourself on videotape or any type of, if you have Zoom, you can record yourself and watch what you say and what you look like when you're speaking to people and see it through their eyes. We all tend to have a picture of what we think we come across like and what we think we look like. But when you actually see it, often it's quite different. This is one of my favorite things to do with clients. I'll come into we'll set it up in advance where people are going to come into a room and role play. So I train somebody to play the part of the customer. At an appointed time, each salesperson comes in one by one, and I have a video camera set up on them. And the instructions are just conduct a regular sales call. Do your very best to keep it as real as it is in the field, and try to ignore that there's a sales trainer watching every word that you say and recording it on videotape. Now, that's not an easy thing to do, but it's a great exercise, because when the sales role play is done, we now plug my camera into some kind of a monitor and we watch what just happened. And I can't tell you how many times people have had revelations watching themselves. Like, gee, Jeff, I didn't know I pick my nose when I talk to prospects. Yeah, Bob, I noticed that you do that. I think that would be something I would try to avoid. Or sometimes we just have a weird expression on our face that we don't realize. Practicing in the mirror, recording yourself and watching it back. Practice with a friend or an associate, or ask your manager if they'll watch and give you honest feedback. As tough a guy as my stepfather was, and my stepfather was a very tough guy, anytime I got a new job in sales, I wanted to give him my presentation so that he could give me honest feedback. And he was sometimes brutal, but it made me better. You are all also welcome to send me a video of you doing your presentation or your brief commercial or any part of your presentation. Send it to me. I'd be happy to take a look at it, send it back to you with any comments. And sometimes the comments are, wow, this is fantastic. I wouldn't change a thing. Or I might have some ideas for you that might be helpful. But practice and do things consistently, no matter what sales process you're going to use. The one that I just shared with you, the Sandler system, Challenger, whatever sales process you're using doesn't really matter to me, but do it consistently. Consistency in prospecting, consistency in selling is key. So practice and make sure you're doing it consistently. So remember, come across with confidence. When it comes time to offer your pricing, by the way, call it the investment, not the cost or the price. Remember, sales is mostly psychology. When we talk about cost or price, people see green pieces of paper with pictures of dead presidents on them flying out of their wallets with little wings. Call it the investment. That's a psychologically good word, because most investments should have a return on that investment. So state it with confidence. Always come from a place of service. You're there to serve the prospect. And hopefully by serving the prospect, you will get what you need, which is to make money. Follow a repeatable, proven process that you know is working, and make sure you choose your words wisely. When I'm coaching people, when I'm training people, I listen to every single word they say, and I will pick apart a single word. I will point out to my coaching clients, I would change that word right there, because I promise you, one word can be the difference between a sale and no sale. I guarantee it. So if there's anything I can do to help any of you, members of the Sales Pro Network, or anybody else who's watching this later on the replay, my numbers are at the bottom. You can call me at 516-608-4136. My cell phone's up there also, or you can always email me, jeff@jgsalespro.com. It's always my pleasure to help. And please remember this: Sales is a game of making things happen. So get out there and make sales happen. So I'm going to stop my screen share for a moment and see if there are any comments. Just give me a second. Get back to StreamYard. There we are. Okay, good. Steve says, you don't always need a guest. You have a wealth of knowledge to share. Thank you, Mr. Feswick. I really appreciate that. Good morning from Texas. Fran, I mentioned it was hot here. I'm guessing it's probably a little warmer where you are, so I'm certainly not complaining. Good morning, Lou. I haven't seen you for a while. Confidence can come. I can put this up for you guys. Lou says, good morning, Jeff. Confidence can come from understanding where your product or service is positioned in your industry and what your value added is. Absolutely. If you don't know what value you bring to the table, then you're going to have a really hard time sharing it with somebody else. And Dean Forbes, our guest, I think 2 weeks ago, brilliant guy. This is a guy who understands sales. Golden nuggets, my friend, golden. Thank you, Dean. It's a pleasure. I always love listening and learning from you. All right, guys, that's it for today. It's 10:40. I'm giving you the 20 minutes off early, and I'll repeat myself as I always end these things. Sales is a game of making things happen. Get out there today and make sales happen. Have a great weekend, everybody. Please get in touch with me if I can help in any way. So long.